Welcome everyone to the Stateless Atheist. Today I'm interviewing Nathaniel. Yes, how he said his last name. I don't want to butcher it, so I'm not going to say it. About his experiences within his country in Africa, and give us a little more perspective from a different part of the world than what we normally see. Welcome, Nathaniel.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
For starters, for the viewers, can you tell them what country you are from and be specific to where it is located geographically? Don't just say Africa, say southern, next to which countries and everything like that.
Okay, I'm in Ghana. I'm Nathaniel Dramina from Ghana. Ghana is located in the West African region of Africa. We are surrounded at the north by Burkina Faso. We come to the east, we have the western part, we have Cote d'Ivoire, and then east we have Togo. So that is the diamond. And then the southern, we are close to the Gulf of Guinea. That's the sea part of it. Okay. So that is where you can locate Ghana. Those who want to find.
Okay, can you give a brief history of your country and region, whatever you think is relevant for the conversation we're going to have?
Okay, Ghana was the first country in Africa to get its independence in 1957, and we have been the major exporter of cocoa, timber, and gold. So we are in a region with a good cultural heritage, and recently we even launched the year of return. I think during the past we had Ghana was part of the center where all slaves were being kept before they were transported through the Atlantis. So Ghana is a well-known place, or let's say it's a gateway to Africa. That's where what people mostly refer us to, and a lot of people come here. People of Ghana are very friendly. We are very, very friendly. We have fun with a lot of things. So even the humor itself in the culture dynamics is so interesting that Ghanaians can take very sensitive issues, they can play with it in a very nice way, and nobody gets offended. So that's one way to put it over there. So that is a little bit of a history that is very popular among the rest of the world.
Okay. Can you explain for the viewers what the Scramble for Africa is and how it is taught within your country, in case you do not refer it to that way? In your country, it's one of the colonial powers divided up Africa. I know I just said what it is, but I want you to go into a little more detail for people to learn.
Come again on the question, please.
The Scramble for Africa, where the colonial powers divided up Africa, so where France would own this part, England would own this part. Can you go into it a little more detail for the viewers? Explain around when it happened, which colonial powers were predominantly involved, and which parts of Africa were divided up.
Okay, with Ghana, for instance, our colonial heritage, we didn't really divide up. It was a takeover, a nice takeover from the Danes by the British, and then British continued till they gave independence. So it wasn't like a division, but there were much of agitation when we are speaking about the history of Ghana. Since Britain took over for a very long time till they gave independence, what was significant was the agitation of the people. So we had the Aboriginal Rights Protection Movement. We have the Fanti Confederacy, that were all part of different blocs that were engaging in agitation to make sure that their rights are secured. So with the Aboriginal rights, it had to do with protection of their land, the local people land. They said that the land belongs to the ancestors, the living and then the unborn. So led by one Mensa Saba, he did that and then was able to protect the land, because they were trying to take, the colonial master was trying to take the land from the people, because he was thinking it didn't belong to anybody. And so he was trying to tell them that the land belonged to the ancestors, the living and then the unborn. So even as much as it is lying down, it has owners. And we had that kind of family ownership, family ownership. And so the lands have ownership. And so you may think that it is for a communal thing because it's for a family. You may think it belongs to a lot of people, but the family in Africa is a private entity. And so that is what, moving on to this modern time, it has been deviated. So people think that the African man is genuinely a socialist, but it is not like that. The African man is an indigenous capitalist, but we have our own capitalist nature in a way that we say, I am because we are. And the we is the family. And the family is the extended family. That is a private extended family, because my extended family is different from another person's extended family over here. We are not the same. Like the properties we have in our extended family, we share it alone. We don't give it to another person. And if you're outside the family, you cannot come and claim ownership of our property in our extended family. It doesn't work like that. So that is then moving on, and then they have the agitation to the next level. That had the first political party in Ghana. That was the United Gold Coast Convention. That was led by J.B. Dankwa. Then that was the political party that brought Dr. Nkrumah in as a secretary to help their agitation. And then later on, there was a break from the UGCC to CPP. So Nkrumah broke away from the UGCC to form his own political party. That's the CPP. And then later won the elections, and then won independence also for Ghana. And then so that was the little bit of a division that came there. But mostly everything was geared towards agitation. And I think the Ghanaians were very dominant in agitating for the freedom of Africans and Ghanaians themselves. So I think most African leaders even came to Ghana after we had our independence. According to the history, most African leaders came to Ghana to as other writers who say that, to get baptized before they get independence for their respective countries. So that is what Ghana is known for. Like the people, we agitate. When the cause is wrong, we expect Ghanaians to speak out loud, and they will do that. We are not timid at all.
Okay. Can you give the African's perspective of the slave trade? I don't mean, of course, simply it was bad, but can you talk about how has it affected today? How can you still feel the effects of the slave trade in the past?
Yeah, you see, the slave trade was something that didn't help Africans, because it's kind of disrupted their civilization. The African tradition didn't do much of the written, but it also has its own unique oral way of keeping documenting things in an oral form. Now, the slave trade came to disrupt all these things, bringing new civilization. Some were good, some were also bad. And then when it got to the point where human beings are being traded like commodities, then you realize that human rights are no longer being adhered to. So you realize that those things really brought a lot of detriment to the African population. But most Africans have mentioned slave trade in a way that they have taken their participation from it, because it started as an exchange. First, you bring these goods, another person bring goods like butter. Then the goods graduated to humans. So now you take humans in an exchange for something else, and then you become happy, and then you move on. So, and then there were other slaves that were captured against their own will, or maybe they are war prisoners, and then they are being sold as slaves. So we cannot talk about slave trade, even as much as it has affected Africans, and then we shy away from Africans' participation in slave trade. So I feel that it was wrong. You also participated. It's now in the past. Can we are forgive even our ancestors when you go to the Cape Coast Castle, It's written there boldly that we are forgiving the past. So if we are forgiven, let's move on, because it's good that we know the history so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. So now we know what it is. We know what it was. We can move. Can we move on from there? Can we build some positive part of it? But you realize that after the slave trade, the independence wave that came, and then the political power coming into the hands of the African man, it has also had its own detriment that sometimes, personally, I think that one has been more detrimental than most of the atrocities caused by slave trade, because these are your own people. We have given them political freedom, and then they have kind of coined it to their own gains, to the detriment of a lot of people. You have the lives of Idi Amin. You can mention the Mobutu Sese Seko of Congo. You can mention the atrocities that they have caused. One Professor Aite calls them the Hippo generation. He said they are disappointed him because they have looted the continent of its riches. So they have looted the continent of its riches. So slave trade is never good. Slave trade is bad. Slave trade didn't help us. Slave trade didn't give us our freedom. But moving from slave trade, because now we are not living in that dispensation anymore. There's no slave trade going on currently. But we have put in a different perspective that people's freedom has been limited. That's why I'm proud to say I'm a libertarian in Ghana, to try and then educate people on the new form of oppression. That's if someone oppresses your economic independence, it's also another form of oppression, right? So you should let people get their eye open, because the past will always teach us a good lessons, and so that we don't repeat them. But we should make sure that the current dispensation that we are living in also do something that benefits us more, because if we are going to coin the power in a way that was used like the past, then we are not benefiting as Africans or as individuals who don't have power. The African democracy is the democracy that organized the next election. So once we have organized election, we think it's a perfect democracy, because we're able to have elections, and then some are even very detrimental than others who are even able to hold at least election. It's just the opposition doesn't even operate. You don't have opposition operating actively. So these are things that are crippling us the more. So we lose more money, though aid come into the continent, but we lose more money in corruption than aid. You get it? So these are things that we have to rise up and face the fact that is not how the African society was. Maybe the slavery and the colonization has changed the narrative for Africans, that we have deviated from what our ancestors have been doing, because our ancestors are proud and strong individuals who make or eke out from the earth to make a living for themselves. They didn't depend on any extraordinary political powers. They were mobilizing individually, and then they were getting their own gains from it. And it was, they were making the best out of the resources that they had at the time, with looking at their civilization. But now we have deviated from the past, and then we have presumed a different ideology, and let me put it across, like most Africans have a feeling for the concept of socialism and communalism. Like they like it. Like I won't shy away from it. They think that their prosperity lies in they being together economic wise, everything belonging to us and whatnot. But that is not how the genuine African man behave. So it's like I'll urge most of my African colleagues that we should go back and trace our ancestors and know that they were people who were engaging in private organizations. They had their own private farmlands. They go to their market. If you look at one thing that is genuine with Africa, every community, or let me say most of the communities, grow around markets. And the African woman is the one who 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 is the let me say, it's an institution of a market, because the African woman goes to market. The African woman, they have a special day that they will go to the market. You see, ladies will dress beautifully to go to the market, take the produce that their family had, and go and sell, get their money, buy things that the family will need, and then take it back home. And every African community, if you just ask what day is the market day, most of the African community has a particular day that is strictly a market day. It's not a holiday, it's a market day. So everybody is going to the market. Villagers from far are bringing their goods to the little developed town to come and trade. So that is a society. That's the African society. It's market oriented, but we have deviated from it. So that we can blame that to colonialism and whatnot, because they try to plan things from the center. They try to impose chiefs in certain part of Africa. In Nigeria, there were certain communities that even didn't have chiefs, but the colonialists tried to impose chiefs there so that they could be able to rule using their own colonial governance, like imposing it on the people without any participation. So those things have also disrupted the development framework that we have over here. And so everybody thinks it's supposed to go that way. But we had a community that even had no chiefs. They were not fighting. They were law and order, but there was no chief. They were law and order. They were not fighting. You get so. And then we had what we call in Ghana, we had the poll tax ordinance, or I think 1852 or something. It was an agitation to fight the colonial tax by the local people. They agitated against the tax system. So these are people, we tell that they, right from the onset, they love their economic freedom. And so we cannot say that the African man by far has been deviated from its own ingenuity with colonialism, and that has affected most part of the continent, because colonialism has actually deflected what we know and has given us a new thing that we are pushing that is not genuine with our system. We don't understand it. It's like it has been imposed on us and we are moving with it anyway. But we had democracy. Africa has democracy before even colonization started. We had our own democracy before colonization started. Maybe we didn't call it democracy, but the way it was organized, you will see democratic features in it. So a typical example is the African chief. We have learned some of these things in part. I'm not a typical student of African studies, but I've done aspect of it. The African chief is without power if the Council of Elders don't support his decision.
Yes.
Okay, so can you hear me now?
Yes, good. I can hear you and see you again.
I was saying that the Africans had democracy. Okay, the African chief is without power if the Council of Elders don't support his decision, and the Council of Elders are the family heirs. Okay, they are drawn from the family heads of each clan. So each clan has a family head, and that family head represents the family in the chief council. So there cannot be. So it is highly. You see, like it is the power is like it's like a 50-50 power share. So though the chief is there, but the chief holds power in trust for the council. So you heard that the chief is really, really limited and highly controlled. So the chief cannot take a decision without consulting the Council of Elders. It doesn't work like that. So if that is not representation enough, I don't see what else is representation. You get it?
Yes.
So we had that kind of system, and then it checked power control. But when the colonialists brought their form of power, it brought about absolutism, and people became too power drunk. And even with the chief's role in political administration in the colonial past, they elevated the chief so much that even people begin to agitate against them. That no, that's not how our chief has been functioning. They became so big in our political people, even we had the early elites. The elites at first agitation was that they should be involved in colonial governance because they were sidelined and everything was the chief. And those things were beyond the chief's capacity. And so we the colonialists gave the chiefs a lot of roles. That's how come a lot of people become power drunk. It started from the African man didn't like distance. So it's all has its own colonial traits, but that is not what the indigenous African man stood for. So if that is how colonial started power shared and those things. So
can you explain briefly what the political climate today is within your country, how it happens, how it works?
Okay, our political climate now. First of all, I'll start with the duopoly. So we have our history has had 21 years of coup. So the first coup was in 1966. That was the coup to overthrow the Nkrumah government. And then it moved on to 1979. We was restored to constitutional democracy. 1981, another coup. So I think the 1981 coup was the coup that has lasted for a very long time. But prior to 1981, there were other coups. So we had another one in 1960. I talk about 1966. We had 1969. There was also another coup. 1969, another coup. 1970. So these are the constitutional. The times we have restored constitutions in the country. So if there is a constitutional restoration, that means there was a coup before the constitutional restoration, right? So in the 1969 constitution, because there was 1966 coup, then 1979 constitution, there was a coup before 1979 constitution. Then we had another coup in 1981, and then the 1981 went a very long way till we had 1992 constitution. So we have almost about 21 years of coup in the country, and during those times, certain political parties were banned, like the CPP, the Nkrumah's political party, was one time banned from participating in politics. Though Nkrumah's party had also at one time also banned all activities of all other political parties prior to their overthrow. So that you see the way people are using the power. So that is what has also attracted our history. Then currently, after 1992, what we have in Ghana is that we have political party democracy. So now we have multi-party. Any individual at all can be able to set up his own political party, to go for an election, to be voted for as a president or as a parliamentarian. Then we have individuals like independent candidates. So either you could come with a political party or you come as an independent candidate. You can come into the political scene. It's free for everybody. You just have to follow the constitutional process, and it doesn't prevent anybody at all, because we have multiple parties. Currently, we have about I think 13 political parties in Ghana, but the concept of duopoly also prevails over here. So the main parties that are standing is the National Democratic Congress and then the New Patriotic Party. So these are the two main parties that are in power. But currently, the one in power right now is the New Patriotic Party. That is the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the political party that has mobilized power to bring him into power as a constitutionally elected president. Now, so that is the dynamics with our political parties. Now, after that, the political climate is also organized to the grassroots. So we have participation right from the lower level, from the districts. So we have the constituency level, the parties engage in political party activities till it comes to the national level. So that is how the political climate is. So for the party line, before you can stand up for election on a political party ticket, you have to be elected by the delegates of the political party for a particular constituency. So in all, we have about 275 constituencies in Ghana. So those are the constituencies that are represented in the National Parliament of Ghana. So you have to stand in a constituency to be voted on by your party. So let's assume recently the primary that we had was for the MPP, the New Patriotic Party. So you realize that if you are elected by the delegates, that you are standing for maybe this constituency, that means that in the national election you are going to be on the party ticket for the particular constituency. Then you stand for the national election. So when you get elected in the national election that comes this December 7th, then you get a chance to go to the national parliament and then engage in decision-making process and take in the law-making processes as well for the country, and then your party protect your political interest in parliament. So that is how the political structure is organized. Then we have the government structures. The government structure is also decentralized. We have the presidency, and then we have the municipal chief executive, and then we have the district chief executive.
Sorry, everyone. We had a bad connection here, so we had to actually pick up the rest of the interview a few days later. Let's continue. Okay. Everyone, welcome back, Nana. The problem was we lost connection, and so a few days later, we're coming back to finish the interview. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
So, the next thing I wanted to get into was we were already talking about the political climate within your country. Can you explain to me what are the relations between Ghana and the countries around you?
The relation between Ghana and the countries around me.
The relations with them.
Okay, it's a very fine relationship. Okay, what here we don't. It's difficult for, let's say, goods to cross borders, or let's say it's easier for goods to cross borders, but it's very difficult for people to cross borders. So you hear African unity, okay, but on grounds there's a lot of fragmentation on grounds. So goods can easily pass. There are people. Could at the north is Burkina Faso. Okay, Burkina Faso bring goods. It can pass through Ghana to Burkina Faso. Sometimes it goes there. Sometimes they can use the other routes. Ghanaians can move. Goods can move from Ghana to Cote d'Ivoire or Togo. Now let me take a very typical example. They are in certain climates. It's very, let's say, cocoa production, for instance, is very wrong or the law doesn't permit cocoa from Ghana to go to Cote d'Ivoire. If you do that, they call it smuggling. Okay, it's smuggling. It's against the laws in Ghana. So every cocoa farmer sell solely to the government, and then the government will in turn come out to sell to the foreign market. That's how it works. So it's very, very. Sometimes if you let's say if you move from Ghana to Nigeria by road, sometimes you even get frustrated. You can try that experience. You reach every border town and it's as if the checkpoints throughout, like plenty. Like you said, there's a lot of barriers, and the more there's barriers, you realize that the development goes down, because in your place, for instance, you can move from, let's say, one town to a different state, and then you don't even get much checkpoints. You get it. So that's the kind of freedom you get. But here, it's not like that. So the relationship with the town politically is very friendly. Okay, between one president and the other, they can talk. They have cordial fun. But in terms with the people, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. But if you look at a particular town called Bedu Krum is a town in Cote d'Ivoire, and then that same town is in Ghana. When you reach that town, you realize that the indigenous people over there, they don't behave as if there's a border. You get it? They live freely among themselves. They do everything freely, but that imaginary political line, once it divides the people, but the people see themselves that they are together. But that's not where for the border towns, that one they are together because they see themselves together. They don't really mind the imaginary line because it's a town that they do everything together because you don't see that imaginary lines. But aside that, there's the fragmentation is very deep, and there are a lot of things you cannot do because, and then you realize that in Ghana we speak English, and then the surrounding towns, most of them speak French. So the integration is very difficult for the people to just integrate. But it's not really easy as maybe they will put it on the in the political space. It's not really easy like that. You can go, but sometimes you don't meet some of their criteria, the checkpoint criteria. It's becoming difficult. You have to pay. You can pay your way throughout to your rich. Like you pay like bribe throughout to your rich. We recently had the African Liberty Forum, and a friend was even sharing experience from Burundi, how someone tried coming through with goose, and he has to give some of the goose to the border officers, give it out till you reach your destination. So sometimes the movement is very difficult within, and even if you have checked you can even do this analysis yourself. Look at flight costs within Africa. Moving from one country to another within Africa, I realize that it's very, very expensive. So if flight cost within Africa is expensive, how do you expect the people to move? So nobody moves. Like it's the few people who are affluent, they are able to afford and do movements. Aside that, the rest, nobody even thinks of moving. Okay, so like I was saying, if you check the flight cost within Africa, it's very expensive. From Ghana to maybe Kenya, it's like $400. Yeah, you can spend more than like around $400, which is quite expensive. You get it. Moving within your own neighboring African country, you get it. But politically, we say Africa is one, Africa unite. But there are barriers that are not really helping the unity and whatnot. So physically, I would say that there are a lot of division in Africa, but politically, they just put it on the lip service and say Africa is one, Africa unites, whatever. But because we should be able to move freely from one member state to another without any, if we are really one, without much checkpoint. But there are too much fragmentation on the one physically. That one, it really worries. I hope it's clear.
Do you have an idea of what the general view people in your country have toward the United States government, and what their view is towards the people that live in the United States, and how are those two views separate or equal?
The general view of people toward the United States government.
And then the people also, separately.
Okay, the general view is that an average person in the US is far, far better. And so if you find yourself there, you also become affluent because there are a lot of opportunities there, and you become better off. Yeah, that view is everywhere. And then
what's the view of, what do you like? How do you all view like me and everybody else who live in America? Not if you came to America yourself.
If I came to America, I don't know the angle you want to get, but we see either aside being viewed as someone who is better off and rich, the rest is that you have more freedom, you can do what you want because it's America, like that kind of thing. Like that's the view.
So what do you think about the United States government itself?
Personally, I feel that United States government is working for the United States people, and whatever policies that they are doing, most of them benefits the indigenous people. And if it is benefiting them, that's their government. But if we find ourselves at the other side that we don't really like what is happening with the government, that I don't feel that we have much say in it, because we don't. That is not our government. So I always feel that we should push that our government also do better things for us, so that we'll also be very happy here, rather than expecting that someone in another country do policies that will also favor you, that you are not part of that country. So it's hard to say it this way, but that's the straightforward view that people must get over here.
What are the views of the Chinese government? Same
Chinese
thing?
government. The Chinese, okay, so here personally, people view the Chinese as they are taking most of our resources away in recent times, and I don't even know if we are even getting a benefit from that, because they deal in this Sino, they do this kind of butter deal. They give money, and then in return they get back resources. And so that's how people view. And then they are predominant in our galamsey sector, or their mining sector. They do a lot of mining activities here. And so if you mention a Chinese person in Ghana, the average person would say that these people are spoiling our lands, or they are into mining and spoiling stuffs over here. But so that is what they view about the Chinese people, because they even engage in the retailing business, and but averaging to their hard work, they engage in regional some that they are retailing business that some foreigners are not supposed to engage in, but you find Chinese engaging in it and whatnot. So the view is that they are taking resources away. Like that's how the Chinese views.
So what do people in your country think about the race relations that are happening in the United States now? The racial clashes, the protests and the riots?
Yeah, we were very, very sad when we saw that incident. But to be personally, I was very sad when I saw that incident, and then it sprung protests, which I felt that was good, and people need to protest when things like this happen. But along the way, things are shifting to rioting, and that one also brings different problems that you don't expect in a particular positive movement to bring about a certain positive change. So that was the other side of it. But generally, our thoughts were with the family of Floyd, and even over the president through the Ministry of Tourism. They hold a vigil for Floyd, and then shared like messages and whatnot there. So with that's how it went up to the government, and then some people also tried protesting in Ghana here to support that as well. So we had a group of Ghanaians that also tried protesting to support it, but that is, and then there's also the humic aspects, or let me say the classback aspect of it, because in our Ghanaian societies, everything that you do, some people also have their own way to also like come in with a different angle. So they're like, you see, we have a lot of ethnic groups here. We have ethnic groups, right? So, and there's also within the ethnic, or among the ethnic groups, there's no division. Okay, but when there's time for mobilization and campaigns for election, then certain, let me say, petty politicians try to use ethnic differences as a tool to gain political points and get elected. You get it? So sometimes that is also one aspect. So people will also be like, you stay in Ghana and you are speaking to issues in America, whilst your ethnic group is in or are in conflict, or let's say do not support or have a certain strong hate towards another ethnic group. You get it? So it doesn't make you any different. Are you getting what I'm saying? So that's also another angle that people also put to it. But in our ethnic diversity, the people are one. You get it? So it is the only time that there have been, you see the people hating about ethnic differences is when they are trying to use it as a political tool to amass power for themselves. So and sometimes it's hard, or it's painful that people also fall for it, and then they are happy and they toe that kind of ethnic line. That sometimes is very terrible, because there's intermarriages happening in Ghana. People marry from one ethnic group to another. So there's no division. You get it? But when it comes to mobilization of political power, that is where you feel that somebody is trying to say that, hey, me, I belong to this particular group, so you guys should kind of cast your vote for me. My opponent is from this side, and he is not supposed to get the power. You get it? So that is the only only point where there's kind of a backlash over there. But aside that, we are good here, and the race, we also have different differences over here, but ours is also organized in terms of ethnic lines, but they are all race.
So, from what I understand, you're a libertarian. Can you explain to people a little more detail about what your particular political and economic views are? Because libertarian is a pretty broad spectrum.
Yeah, we thank you. We have come to the libertarian point of the whole discussion. Now, in Ghana, for instance, I am for a limited government where they don't engage in too much rules or trying to interfere in people's life with laws that are alleged to help people. Okay, and then economic wise, I prefer the market economy. The market economy. People, there should be respect for property, for rights, and then property rights. So that people will be able to, or people are empowered, and then they will be able to be creative. There should be the environment should be very friendly, so that they will be creative to create something for themselves. But our orientation in Ghana here has always been that we expect everything to come from the government. So the government has a high expectation. So and the government in Africa, everybody in Ghana is expected to do a lot of things. That personally, I feel that some of them fall outside the purview or the domain of the government. But because of the power that comes with it, so they always try to promise and then put themselves in a position where they try to say, okay, we are going to deliver what you guys are asking for, and not telling the people the hard truth. Because if you say the hard truth, it doesn't win votes. There's not everybody that is, let's say, has the kind of principles that I have as a libertarian to understand those hard views or hard viewpoints. That's okay, the government is not for number one, the government is supposed to employ you, but the government was supposed to create an environment that will make the private sector flourish so that they can rather expand to create more jobs in the economy. But the government will go direct and say, when we come to power, we'll give you more work to do, or we'll create jobs for you. And sometimes when they come and then they are not able to do it, it becomes a disappointment. People are using that as a judge or as a yardstick against the government, which sometimes I feel they were bound to fail in the first place, because the private sector is supposed to be better off to create that job. And then another aspect is that the business sector in here are dependent on the government. So it's like the government, they don't dictate the pace, but the government dictate the pace. So you are supposed to be friends of the government to flourish as a businessman. So if you are not in the, it's either you keep quiet or you be in the good books of government so that you'll be able to flourish. Other than that, you can be crippled. There's certain policies can go against you, and then when you fought, it can they apply the law fully to you. But your colleague in the same business can follow the same regulation, and then he'll be treated differently. You get it? So because you are the wrong side of the government. So that's what also exists here. But in my view as a libertarian, I feel that the government should limit itself to provision of essential services and protection of rights and property, so that and it creates that flexible environment that people can be very creative with it and then be able to function. But that's not what I get.
Why did you become a libertarian? Was there a particular event or an individual that you read? How did you become a libertarian?
Okay, so I've always have this kind of views that I always express, that I would say that are wild from my peers. So anytime they think this way, I also bring a different view that's quite different from what they do. And so along the line, we got into I undertook the student for liberty course,
Okay.
and then I think someone introduced that to me and said I should participate in it. So I just did that. Then I realized that, the viewpoint that I've always been expressing, there's a whole group of people who likes that. Then after, along the line too, there were some debates which was organized by the Institute for Liberty and Policy Innovation. It's a think tank in Ghana. And then I participated. So I came to their close. I was like, okay, there's a whole body that stands for this kind of views in this country. So then I align myself, continuing to learn more. I was like, so I found some most liberal books. I was like, some of the views that I have been documented, and I was like, that's nice. And I was learning more to get other perspective of it and whatnot. So I read books like Bestiards, The Law, that talks about legal plundering, and I was like, this is a typical society. I see this around me, and that I was so intrigued. Why liberty? Yeah, Frederick Bastiat. I was like, why liberty? And there are some other books, and then we began to, let's say, we advanced, and then we participated in some courses with Atlas Leadership Academy. We were able to advance other events in Ghana, try to mobilize some group of people who we think are also having this kind of view, so that they'll be able to see us more. And so when we do that, we do those events, we tell them about entrepreneurship, how they are supposed to build stuff, and stop expecting things from the government and only expecting that will make the business environment better for everybody.
Have you ever read Ibn Khaldun?
Pardon?
Have you ever read Ibn Khaldun?
No.
You should. He was actually an Arab writer.
I know, but I've heard of him. Ibn Khaldun, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard of the name, but I've not. I think I read about. I did geography, so I read about him in Geographical Thoughts, but I've not found any of his works directly to read from him.
He's quite interesting because he had a lot of these thoughts from that long ago, and he wasn't from Ghana, but he was much more closer to your region than Frederick Bastiat.
Yeah. We have, I think recently, Professor Ite had published the Applied Economics for Africa, which talks about African indigenous institutions and the indigenous African man, and how they organize the economy and whatnot. So I think it's also books like that are also helpful and are helping us. But we also try to write to shape public policy debates and whatnot. I remember when people were during this coronavirus season, one of the work that we were able to do was to estimate the cost that it will cost, like the cost that will be on us, or if we initiate a lockdown, because people were happy calling for a lockdown and saying we should lock down, and little did they realize that the lockdown, you can't just lock down, but it must come with a certain cost. Then they realized that, hey, so this is going to be that expensive, but the government did it partially anyway. So instead of the total lockdown that the people were calling for, the president gave a partial lockdown, which at least help the situation and reduce cost burden on as well, because if we are going to total lockdown, that everybody should be in the room and whatnot. So we gave a lot of insight on it, because in our localities here, it's not as I don't know how to put it. It's not building. You have your house, okay, but you sleep in the house, and you fetch your water from maybe 300 meters away from you. You go and fetch water, and then you come back to your room. You get so in a society like that, you cannot come and impose a lockdown. If you do that, people are going to suffocate, or like they are going to the pressure is going to be very detrimental to the people. You get it? So we need to bring all these things to the debate, and then have people considering it. And at the end of the day, it was a partial lockdown. We acted in a buffer zone. So if you are within your community, you don't go out of your community. You get it? So that people can have access to basic things within their community, because you buy food from your community, you get your essential needs from within the community. Okay, so if you lock yourself into your room alone, you are going to cut off yourself from the essential services. And I think that also helped a lot. And we also talk about the cost involved, and people were assisting each other, and it was helpful. It really helped. As compared to what people were calling for. They didn't factor the way the society is, because they were looking at how other people have solved their situation by imposing lockdown in other jurisdictions, and saying, okay, fine, if the disease has also come here, then let's go to a lockdown, without considering that our society or our organization of our structures are even different. You get it? So that's what we do now, and we have gotten quite followers on Facebook, for instance. We have people who express and like our views. When we started, it wasn't easy, but now they are beginning to like our views. But one thing also here is that when you are speaking as a libertarian, you are, depending on who the message is favoring, you are you have that kind of tag. Well, you see, we have the dominant political parties here. So if it's either you are with the NPP or you are with the NDC. Though the NDC is like a social democratic party, while the NPP is a liberal democratic party. So they believe in capitalism and organizing through the private sector. And so sometimes when you speak and it favors the NPP, they will say, okay, you guys are for NPP and you are trying to behave as if you are not for NPP. And sometimes when you speak and sometimes it goes in favor of the NDC, then the NPP followers will be like, you guys are for the NDC and you are not. You should let us know where you stand. But people don't live with the principle that, fine, I am a liberal, or this, or you hardly find people even at my age, within the people around like their 20s, going by a principle. Like you hardly find that. Like there are principles that people believe in. You hardly find that. So we are saying that we are for certain particular principles. And so if it goes in line of those principles, we are for it. But if it goes against those kind of principles, no matter who you are bringing it, we are going to be opposition to you. I get it. But people will mistaken you. And so that's how come on Facebook, for instance, I have my filter that I'm a libertarian. It helps a lot. Previously, because if you don't identify yourself, people will be identifying you with their own perception. So that's why I decided to apply that filter, and it helps. So now I even enjoy it when my friends say, some people even call me Mr. Liberty, because once there's something coming up and there is no freedom in it, you should be expecting that I will go all out and against it, because that is the principle I believe in. I remember, for example, when we were in school, the school changed their policy. So we used to have buses that individually people will you board a bus and then you pay. So you pay as you go. So if you don't need a bus, you don't pay for it. And that's a simple market interaction. If I'm using the bus, I pay for the bus. Now they brought a policy that all students are going to use the bus for free, and everybody was happy about it. So at the other check of it, there was a component about the bus that says that, okay, every student is going to pay 70 Ghana cedis, or let me say 70 Ghana cedis, something a little bit more above $100, $10. Okay, like something around $15 or maybe $15. So so every student was going to pay 70 Ghana cedis, and I was like, good. So this thing that is being preached on grounds that students are going to enjoy buses for free is going to limit economic freedom, because you are not, the bus is not free in the first place. You are paying for it, and it's a component in your school fees, which most students didn't know. And I was like, once you get this bus started operating, and there were a long waiting time for the buses, because people had to queue, because everybody, those who would have walked are now going to board a bus because they think it is free, increasing the waiting time for average student to get a bus. So I was like, these are what. So I wrote an article analyzing the effects of the policies, and I was telling them that there's double payment, and usually the private sector always find their net. So whilst people were waiting for the bus that was delaying, there were private buses that would come and say, okay, if you're in a hurry, you can just join and you still pay anyway. And people will join and still pay because they are being delayed for their classes and whatnot. So I was like, if you do that, you are doing double payment. And people also, the university also goes with residents. So people would like to stay in apartments that are closer to the university so that they will be able to go to class quick. And apartments that are closer to the university are expensive as compared to the apartments that are far away from the university. So I was like, if you are staying in an apartment that is closer to the university, so that you can get access to your class by walking, and you still engage in the bus, it means you are doing triple payments because your rent cost has factored in the location and whatnot, so that you can get access quick. So that article had a lot of reaction from the students, and they were like, yeah, it's true, what you are saying is true, we are making double payments, and a whole lot of it. And people were so happy that, oh yeah, you are talking about the truth. So we are kind of limited. And once the bar system is like, you have already paid before the service comes to you, whether the service is good or bad, you can't say, hey, next time I'm not going to get your service, because you have already paid. So these are some of the analysis. When we open the analysis to people, they begin to like it, they begin to appreciate it, and they really got it, and they appreciated the fact that it was limiting the economic freedom, which hitherto the people didn't really see it like that.
What would you say is the biggest challenge in your country from a libertarian perspective?
The biggest challenge is the orientation of the people from dependence to date. Okay, it has always been that, like I mentioned, the government provides for them. Like, the government should provide for them. So everything the government should do for them. So that's the biggest challenge. So if you go and say, take a very big view and say the government shouldn't do this, if the government continue to do things for you, it's going to increase our taxes, and we are going to bear the cost in the long run. Then they don't really get it, because they think that once they have voted the government to power, it is the duty of the government to do everything for them. So That's one of our biggest challenges. So when you are expressing views along that line, it's kind of, it has a lot of backlash. And also, especially even on employment, and you go like the government is supposed to provide you work. It's not something that's so popular over here. So you get that kind of backlash. And it has been proven that most of the employment interventions of government, they ended up in a scandal one way or the other. So even the previous administration, if that is to go by, this current administration have not gotten any scandal on their employment intervention yet. But the previous administration, they had an employment program, which is I think what we call the GIDA, something for the Ghana Youth Entrepreneurship and something development agenda also. We call it GIDA. It hits a big scandal. They engage in what do you call? They said they're engaging in farming. We asked for the produce. They said they were this peacocks. They said they were rearing peacocks, and we asked for where are the peacocks? They said the peacocks are fly away to Burkina Faso. So there was at the end of the day there was no peacocks to show that okay, this is what we were rearing and this is what we have and this is what we are going to. There was nothing to show. It was totally paper project. And so when you see something like this, like then if you want to really prevent it, then you should stop the government from doing this kind of thing. But anytime they will do it, it's going to end in a scandal. So let's save our money, let's save ourselves, and it's not so popular. Most of the liberal standpoints and whatnot are not so popular. So sometimes you have to agree with them and then open the analysis in a certain way, especially when you approach it with cost. Everybody doesn't want cost. So when you go with cost, it's really done on people that, oh, okay, let's rethink this thing again. The cost is very important. It's affecting us. Okay, so let's rethink it. That one, you get people to resonate with you. But if you go to engage the policy head on, it doesn't get that kind of resonation. So you have to say, okay, fine, this policy is good, but let's ask the question, how much is it going to cost us? And then people will begin to do this. But mostly, when people are engaging in public policy dialogue over here, aside the think tanks that they want to achieve a certain decorum as like maybe a good policy that will going to last for time, the rest of the people, or let's say depending on who is bringing the policy in, they view it as an opposition to it. So okay, we are opposition, since we are not in power, we don't support this policy even though it is good. You get it? They go like, since we are not in power, we support this policy. And sometimes you have to also agree with certain principles that will, certain things that might help the community in the long run, because I think the current administration had enrolled what we call the free SHS policy. So it's giving education to secondary level, up to secondary level, to people or everybody in the school, among the school going age, for free. And personally, you say the normal to say that liberal shouldn't expect free stuff from the government, but with this kind of policy, you realize that it's something that we need, because education is an essential thing. And looking at the population, majority of the population are lagging behind because they can't afford education. So you think these things like this, you should agree to something, because there's a social problem. There's a social problem for people have not been able to access education because of its cost. So if that kind of barrier is taken away, and then these people, if they are enlightened, they'll be able to agree with some of your liberal standpoints because they understand the policy down. You get it? So you need to allow some of these things to pass through so that it helps, because it's kind of unique to the social structure that we find ourselves in. So, and then but something like this, you realize that other people will be like, oh no, it's not good because that's not our government in power. We should oppose it. You get it? And then they'll be giving a whole lot of arguments against it, that it's not going to help, it's not going to work. We need infrastructures and whatnot. Yeah, we have always needed infrastructures, but you need to do certain hard things whilst you go. You cannot say we are going to stop schooling and wait for all the school infrastructures to be built before we start schooling. No, it can't be done like that. Okay, so sometimes we agree with some of these things so that it solves a social problem or something that has to do with the core, so that we can move on as a people. I think it helps.
What would you say is the most important takeaway from this conversation? What would you want people to listen to this conversation and remember the most?
Okay, what I would like people to remember the most is that the African society is not a socialist society as they have been taught to believe, because they should trace it to their indigenous and realize that the African man was a free man that organizes his activities freely, and so they should get that and stop thinking that the African society is a socialist, and stop generalizing that, because we didn't start like so. Colonialism and whatnot has disrupted us, and then we begin to adopt certain things that wasn't part of us. So they should understand the African society, what they should take time to do some reading and understand the people who predate before colonialism started, and see how they organize their society. And because over here, young people have love for socialism. So that's why if the government is doing something, people like it. People want the government to continue to do it. And so I prefer that we begin to depart from that kind of thinking and appreciate ourselves, empower ourselves, and go out and be creative. And also stand against the laws that are limiting creativity. I think that's our biggest challenge over here. So anything that is going to limit creativity, you should also stand against it. Anything that is going to limit our freedom, we should stand against it. And in the end, I believe once the African man is an industrious man, so once he has his freedom and he has his capabilities, he can function and become better off. So let's begin to go for that as our policy direction and help us, rather than that view. I want us to change that. So that's what I would like people to take away from this conversation.
What are 3 to 5 pieces of media that would help people understand the things you talked about today? And what would they be? They can be books, articles, music, movies, anything that will help them understand Africa, your libertarian views.
Okay, so I think articles will be the best, because nowadays people read online a lot. So an article, and then for the video, it's also nice, but our internet cost is expensive, so most people will not like to watch some of these educative videos, but they would like.
Any particular titles?
Pardon?
Do you know any particular titles of articles or videos that you think people should read or watch that would help them understand your views?
Okay, to help them understand my views.
Yeah.
Like I should suggest articles.
Yes, articles, books, movies.
Oh, okay. So there are a lot of. Let's start with why liberty. Why Liberty is a book written, edited by Tom Palmer. It's a very simple book. And then we have Peace, Love, Liberty. We have Moralities of Capitalism. I think people have a lot of perception about capitalism. They don't know that capitalists spread their wealth. So I think Moralities of Capitalism, that book is very nice. And it's really debunk the hardened viewpoint or hardened perception about capitalism. And I think that will also help a lot. And then for the videos, there are a lot of liberal channels on YouTube that people can subscribe, especially the Heritage Foundation. They do a lot of good work on libertarianism, and there are a lot of education over there. And some articles, we have ilapi.org. We put liberal articles over there, our viewpoints over there. So people can also follow the works that we put there. That's ilapi.org. And then we also have the africanliberty.org. That also have a lot of libertarian write-ups. africanliberty.org. They have a lot of libertarian write-ups over there that people can also follow as well. So, and then the people can even follow Young Africans for Opportunities. It's also another organization that I'm part of. That we also advance events that creates opportunities for people. So people can also follow us and then enroll in our events, read our write-ups, and also get to understand the libertarian point of view very well, especially those who are living in Ghana.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Diana. This was a very interesting conversation. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you soon.